welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And thank you for joining us today for our 11th annual WBECS 2021 pre-summit. Please let me know that you can hear me by typing into the Q&A box the answer to the following question. Who inspired you in your career path to get you where you are now? So type that into the Q&A box and let's see what we have coming in. So one more time, type the answer to the question into the Q&A box. Who inspired you in your career path to get you to where you are now? Gilda says Eva Hirsch. Timothy says Rollo May. Elsbeth says my sister and partner. Hillary says Lynn Christian. I know Lynn. Lynn's great. Simon says my therapist. Rena says guided by spirit. Eve says Marion Franklin. Srinivasa says my dad. Johan says Gerard. Jess says my dad. We have Marnie who said mentors. Louise says Boy Scouting. Alice says my sister. Great. Keep those coming in. Those are really interesting answers. I'll be bringing Yannick in just a moment to cover the topic of today's session, which is existential coaching, why the big questions matter. We'll hang out for the next 45 minutes, and both Yannick and I would love to make this a conversation that will go beyond this session. So please click on the discussion link in the chat box. That is wbecs.com/discuss20. Jump in there and post any questions or comments that might come up for you during the session. We'll keep an eye on what's coming through, and I'll raise it with Yannick in the last 10 minutes of the session that is reserved specifically for Q&A. If in any case you can access this link, please go to wbecs.com/sign up to log in first, and then click the initial link from the chat box. So for those of you who are just coming in, welcome to the WBECS pre-summit one more time. My name is Dino, and I'll be your host for today. We also have Cecil and Ared joining us to curate your questions and comments. As you probably know, at WBECS, our mission is to significantly raise the global standard of coaching and give back to the world as a result. The pre-summit, which is what you're experiencing right now, is free of charge and runs through June 17, 2021, which is 6 more days. For those of you who are an ICF or an EMCC member, by attending the pre-summit sessions, you can receive up to 5 free ICF CCUs or EMCC CPDs. We will email you your certificate automatically once the pre-summit ends after June 17th, 2021. If you love the experience of a pre-summit, then you'll be happy to know that that's just a small taste of what's being offered in the 10-month full summit, which kicks off in July. Now, one thing you may not know is that the percentage of all proceeds from the pre-summit goes to our nonprofit project called Ethical Coach. Ethical Coach works with leaders of the nonprofit organizations that are committed to addressing the greatest humanitarian and environmental challenges of our time. Some of these include Wild Networks, the Hunger Project, Justice Innovation Lab, and UNHCR. You can learn more or join our Ethical Coach team by visiting the Ethical Coaching space inside the WBECS online community to learn more. So let's get started. Today we have a very special session. I'm honored to introduce Yannick Jacob. Yannick, feel free. Oh, you're already on camera. Great. Yannick is an existential coach, positive psychologist, and coach trainer. With a background in psychology and applied positive psychology, he helps people to gain clarity, make better choices, and live their best life. Yannick is also a facilitator and a course consultant for the internationally renowned Positive Psychology Practitioner Certificate and a member of the teaching faculty at the School of Life and the International Center for Coaching Supervision. Now, a fun fact you probably won't know about Yannick is that he's a passionate vinyl collector that holds over 3,000 vinyls in his collection. So that will be all from me for now. I will now hand it over to Yannick and to start with your topic for today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dino, for the introduction. I can tell you a couple of thousand of vinyl records. I enjoy to move, and somehow my wife is still friends with them. So I'm really excited to be here, and thank you all for being here. I know there's a few faces in the audience that I know, and there's plenty of faces in the audience that I haven't met and that perhaps haven't met me. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to something I'm very passionate about, which is existential coaching. It's really all about the big questions, and some of the big questions I will introduce you to. What does it mean to be alive? What is it about our human condition? So we don't have that much time for a big topic, so let me get straight into it and ask you, as a sense of overview, what's it like not to know? I mean, I've already given you a hint, but I like to ask this question because it is a natural human desire to want to know what's going to come. And yet uncertainty is part of the fabric, not just of the human condition in general, but of life, existing, being a human in work, being a human in relationships. We are striving to create certainty. And how often do coaching clients come to into our coaching room and try to create some certainty around how to move forward and what's going to come? We like strategies. We like to be confident before we make decisions. So not knowing what's going to come is a really interesting situation that, as an existential coach, I sometimes like to create that and see how clients react to that. I'm trying to get a sense for how does my client react to uncertainty? What's their relationship with not knowing? Given that it's part of our human experience so often, whether it's in work or life or anywhere else. However, given that this is not a coaching session and we're not doing existential work per se, let me tell you a little bit about what's going to happen, introduce you to some of the biggest questions and how they relate to what people bring into the coaching room. We talk about the human condition and how existential philosophers and thinkers started to make sense of what this human condition is. What are the existential givens that all of us experience just by being alive and in the world with other people? And how do they come together, and how can they inform our coaching practice? Not just an existential coaching practice, and I give you a little bit of a framework for that, but what can you take from that for the way that you're already coaching? In my experience, understanding existential philosophy, understanding the human experience in more depth will help every coach to coach better, because we get a sense, a holistic sense for our client across their existential dimensions. And I'll tell you why that matters. If we have time, I'll go through a few practical guidelines, and I do want to say a few bits about why we need more existentially informed or existentially aware leaders in today's day and age. So let's get started with some of the big questions. This is one that a client came into my consulting room. We had a first conversation, and this was literally probably the second question after hello. And it was a really interesting one. I thought, what a big question is in the room already. And on some level, it was tempting to engage in a conversation like that. But as coaches often do, we're much more interested in where the question comes from and what's behind that question. So really, it wasn't about my beliefs, as it so often is. And, I'm clear on my beliefs, but really that wouldn't have helped the client. What helped them much more is to figure out why they had asked the question. So really here, the question was not about my beliefs. It was only marginally about their beliefs, because what was underneath that was first the question of, well, does God exist? And what did that mean? Why ask that question? Got to a point of, well, the question was really about, is there such a thing as destiny? Is my story written in some way? There was a question around purpose. What am I here for? What should I do? And really, that client was looking for answers and questioning whether there's answers outside of what they currently know, whether there's somewhere they can turn to. And how often do our clients turn to us for questions, and how tempting it is to offer them if we have them. The big questions tend to not have one answer. But digging a little deeper, here it was a really tangible question that often clients bring into a coaching room, which was about their next career move. What should I do next? Where do I invest my time? And how can I carry the responsibility that is attached inevitably to these kind of choices? You know, making a career move, choosing a next job, choosing a partner, making any choices can really be a difficult thing for people, because how can I know that this is going to be the right choice? How is that the best choice I can make? And how can I make those choices in the face of not knowing? So how do we love it if clients come in with big questions like that? I certainly really much love it. And, going out there as an existential coach, I'm grateful that often my clients come in with very big questions. Sometimes they come in with a big question, and then there's many more big questions behind that. And exploring that is an absolutely fascinating task. However, most of the time in coaching there's big questions more hidden in the background. And we don't often know which of these big questions are there. But in my experience, there are always some big questions hiding behind, maybe not the smaller questions, maybe we can call them the everyday questions, or the more common coaching questions, the more focused ones, the ones that seemingly have a clear answer, such as what is my next career move? But developing an awareness of what bigger questions lie behind some of the quote unquote smaller ones can really help us to coach better. So you see some of those questions just in a different order. A coaching client might come in with, what is my next career move? Are there answers out there that I'm not listening to? And then they look at, well, what am I here to do? And they might ask themselves questions around, what is my purpose? What is my why? What could inform those kind of decisions? Because if you start answering some of those bigger questions for yourself, and as I said, there's many answers of them, but if you find your own answer, then you can make a lot of these smaller decisions based on those bigger ones. And that's why it's really useful to develop an awareness of that. So here there were very much questions around purpose and why am I here, and what could guide my decisions based on these questions. How can I be happy as someone with coming into existentialism from positive psychology? That's one of the basic questions there, and one of the fundamental questions that, again, I'm grateful that as a positive psychology coach, many people come to me with a question around how can I be happy or happier? But often that question lingers in the background as clients come to seek more money or a promotion, some sort of success, a sense of accomplishment, wanting to resolve conflict, a conflict with other people or a conflict with themselves, reaching self-acceptance, safety, security, life skills, meaning, purpose, sense of development, growth, feeling better, feeling less stressed, or at a very fundamental level, better sleep, a healthier diet, more exercise, getting into a form of meditation. Often these kind of inquiries have underneath a desire to be happier and figuring out, well, what does that actually mean to me? Because these are all potentially different conversations, but the question at the core is one that is underneath that kind of inquiry. A couple of other big questions. Where do I belong? Home. And you can see those when clients bring into the coaching room relationships around maybe family, resolving conflict, moving jobs, moving country, career decisions, being understood by people, a client coming in, exploring what does it mean? Why am I not being understood? Why do I not feel at home here? It can start with something quite subtle or quite vague around not quite feeling like I'm fitting in. And exploring that, often underneath, there's one of those questions. Another question, how long do I have left? when clients get stressed about things, or they all of a sudden move at 180 miles an hour, they work very long hours. Is there something around time? Time is a prominent theme in existentialism. How long do you have left? Often clients come to coaching facing a round birthday, or a 50 is one of those ages, facing retirement, or perhaps having lost a job, or the end of a relationship, or any other significant ending, is often a reminder of, well, I don't have perhaps that much time left. COVID was a really challenging reminder for so many people that, things don't stay the same. And it can move quite suddenly into very different kind of circumstances. People have lost family members, loved ones, friends, but also jobs, relationships. Whole industries have collapsed. A really profound reminder for many people that, how am I living my life? What does it all mean? We're meaning-making machines. We desire things to make sense. So if a client asking themselves, how does this or that scenario or phenomenon, or how does it make sense? Why did I lose the job, or didn't get the project, or didn't get the promotion? But also, why did other things not work out? And underneath there are questions around, well, what does it mean? What does my existence mean? What does this all mean? Why are we here? Am I in charge? Who's living my life? Heidegger talks about living for the they self. How many coaching clients have I met who've made big life and career decisions based on what their parents, or what society, or what their partner, or what their children might want them to do? So do I have free will? Do I make choices based on what I want? Or am I being manipulated by social media or by other agents? And do I only think? Do I have the illusion that I make free choices? Or is that actually the case? How can I make confident choices in a world that's volatile, that's uncertain, that's complex, and that's ambiguous? It's difficult to speak with certainty when at a fundamental level, everything's uncertain. Some things are more certain than others. But ultimately, even if I said I want to leave this room right now, I cannot be 100% certain that that's going to happen. I might have a heart attack. Somebody might stop me. Something odd might happen, so that's actually not going to happen. Now, I'm pretty confident that I could leave that room and succeed in that. But there's always an extent of uncertainty that is part of the fabric of our human experience. And it's what makes life exciting. Is this real? I had a colleague who just couldn't quite shake the sense that this is a simulation. Is this really real? Do I matter? If we are in the matrix, then maybe it doesn't, or maybe it does. It's a choice to believe in rather than something that we can know with 100% certainty. Every atheist is a believer. Everybody has a belief system. And whether that's a religious belief, a spiritual belief, or the belief that something doesn't exist, we're all believers in some way. We need to have some faith in order to move forward, bridging this kind of uncertainty. And the big one, who am I? How can I be myself? Be yourself. It's an interesting piece of advice, right? What does it actually mean? What is a self? And philosophers have asked those questions, not just philosophers. Every human being at some point will ask themselves the question in some way or another of, who am I? And what sits at the core, whether that's finding your why or your purpose or uncovering your values. That is a question underneath. And if we work to create a good sense of who am I, then we can make a lot of decisions on that basis. So it's another one of those core questions. So existential philosophy really is about those fundamental questions of what does it mean to be human in this world with other people? And these are some prominent existential thinkers. Søren Kierkegaard was one of the first Danish philosopher who thought about these kind of questions and started writing them down. You might have heard of Friedrich Nietzsche, Martin Heidegger, famously Jean-Paul Sartre, about 80, 100 years later. these are philosophers and thinkers from the late 19th and 20th century who started asking those kind of questions and using philosophy as a process to create some knowledge that we cannot observe, because we cannot measure existence or the human experience of existing. So we had to use philosophy to get closer to what that might mean. So in a nutshell, it is a philosophy of human lived experience. So we're exploring what is it that makes us human? What is it like to have this human experience? What might we term this human condition? The condition of being human, being alive in the world with other people. Everybody shares that. We cannot escape our human condition unless we stop existing, and if we don't stop existing and we don't continuously distract ourselves from an awareness of our human condition, then we are affected by the givens, the inevitable aspects that are weaved into the fabric of the human experience, which I go into a little bit more detail in a moment. Death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness are the terms that Irvin Yalom, a fantastic writer, I recommend you look into his writing, has termed them. So Heidegger talks about Dasein, just being there, creates paradox and dilemma. It creates a baseline level of anxiety that we cannot get rid of unless we're distracting ourselves or indeed we don't exist. And none of these are desirable, even though in this day and age, we find a lot of our clients, and all of us to some extent or another, distracting ourselves, being engaged in other things, not having the headspace to think about why am I here and what is this? And I'm not suggesting that, we should all sit there and philosophize about what it means to be alive and a human being. Many of those existential philosophers that I showed you developed that didn't lead a particularly comfortable, happy life. They were often riddled by the kind of awareness and despair. So I think it can certainly be overdone. But it certainly is often underdone how many people have not really reflected on what it means to them. And I believe if we do that, then we create more resilience against those inevitable human paradoxes and dilemmas that we are being faced with. We all have those in common. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when are we being faced with death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. So let me tell you a little bit more about it. Emmy van Deurzen has made sense of the human condition across 4 existential dimensions: the Umwelt, Mitwelt, Eigenwelt, and Überwelt. And let me tell you a little bit more about what that means. The Umwelt, German for the surrounding world, the physical dimension. We're talking about endings here, about temporality. Everything ends. Death being the ultimate ending, at least for our physical body. We do not know what comes after death. That's a matter of faith. But whether there is something or there isn't something, what we can know through a method of philosophy is that death is a very significant ending for us. And within the bounds of what we can know and what we can figure out, there's the span between being thrown into this world and then at some point we die and we don't know when. So endings and time being in this world towards our death is a significant condition. So we have this dilemma on this dimension of needing endings to give meaning to our existence. If nothing would end, everything would have less meaning. If we were to live to forever, why do anything now? So it's important that things end because we can value them more because they only last for a certain amount of time. But we don't necessarily want to be reminded that we're going to die or that this job is going to end or that this relationship might not last forever. We don't want to think about it because it's uncomfortable. But when we do sometimes think about it, and we learn to come to terms with it and to accept it and perhaps even embrace it, then we have understood something about our human condition, is that temporality and endings are just an inevitable part of it that we'll face eventually. We don't know when, but all of us are going to face death, even if it's our own one. Meaning and meaninglessness are part of the Überwelt, the overworld in German, the spiritual dimension. So existentialists often talk about a sense of absurdity. I mentioned we're meaning-making machines. We're trying to make sense of things. Maybe there's some things that just don't make any sense. And the existentialists offer us that as a possibility. Their sense of, well, does the world make sense? Is there a meaning of life? Has somebody written this story? Or do we just kind of exist? Is there a bigger divine plan, or do things just kind of happen? Maybe the universe has just created us, and maybe there is no meaning of it. Maybe we don't go somewhere. Maybe there is no purpose of existence. Maybe the meaning of being alive is just to be alive, as Alan Watts said. But what we do know is that we are facing questions around meaning and meaninglessness. And that's, again, a matter of when and not if. We're asking ourselves, and we cannot know whether life as a whole makes sense, whether my existence specifically makes sense, or whether it's all meaninglessness. We cannot know. We can only choose. On the Midwelt, the social dimension, we want the paradox and the dilemma is that we want to belong to a tribe. We're social animals. We need other people. And yet, Sartre famously wrote that hell is other people. We cannot help but compare ourselves. And really, nobody can truly get us. Nobody can understand to fully who we are and what we're experiencing. We're trying across art and movies and writing and talking and expressing ourselves to share our experience and what we think and what we feel. But really, nobody can truly understand what it's like to be me. I cannot truly understand what it's like to be my client. So I don't want to make those kind of assumptions. And I want to create a space where my client can figure that out. What's it like to be in this space where I want to be understood, but nobody can fully, truly understand me? So again, it's one of those elements that is weaved into the fabric of our experience, is that we need other people, but they also create a sense of isolation. I cannot fully merge with somebody, and yet I want to try. And that can be really difficult to come to terms with that. Choices. Most of our clients come to us to make some choices, to take action, to move forward, to navigate their lives or careers in some way. And what I often notice is that my clients want freedom. They love freedom. They would like some autonomy in their lives. But responsibility is something that is often weighing heavier on our clients. How many people do I know who would love the freedom, but they don't like the responsibility? When actually, in fact, they're two sides of the same coin. Every time we choose, we exclude other possibilities. And that can be small choices, like somebody despairing over what to choose for lunch. It's important to recognize that there is no choice that doesn't exclude other possibilities. You can sometimes go back and make a different choice or undo the choice, but you can never make the same choice at the same time again, ever. And that can be difficult to sit with. So it's difficult to bear the responsibility of choosing. Even not choosing is a choice. And when we are curious about our clients, what would happen if you chose not to make a choice? So that brings out an awareness that we always have to choose. We are condemned to be free, Sartre said, and we get to make choices, but we also have to make choices. There's no escaping us making choices. And as soon as we consciously choose, there's responsibility attached to that. And when we own that, we own our successes, but we also have to own when it doesn't go so well. And how many people want to take responsibility when things go well, but maybe not so much when things didn't go so well? So all of these givens, they create uncertainty, they create anxiety. Existential anxiety is different from anxiety that we might be able to make go away. For example, if we get nervous ahead of a talk, we can prepare or practice what we're going to speak about, or we can find out more things about the audience. We can use all sorts of mind tricks to make that kind of anxiety go away. And if we've talked about the same topic for 1,000 times, we're probably not going to get anxious and nervous so much. However, the existential anxiety based on the givens that I just talked to you about, it doesn't go away. You can only ever suppress it and put it into a corner. It will come back in those moments of stillness. That's why a lot of coaching clients, particularly I find in organizations, in positions where they carry a lot of responsibility, they don't want to sit in stillness, and because these things emerge and they show up. People go on holiday and they do whitewater rafting instead of sitting somewhere with their own thoughts. There's good research around the difficulty for people to just sit there with their own thoughts. Many people rather choose to give themselves an electric shock than to sit with their own thoughts. That was a fascinating piece of research. Paradox is difficult to wrap our head around, and that paradox that is a part of the human condition is difficult to make sense of. But everybody has experienced it. We have this inner conflict based on this paradox, based on our existential human condition. And it can be challenging to understand that and to sit with it, particularly to accept it, make sense of it, manage it, ideally embrace that, because it does create a lot of energy. We can use that. So here are some of the practitioners that have taken this kind of philosophy and brought it into their conversations with clients, patients, as therapists. I mentioned Irvin Yalom, Rollo May, somebody mentioned already as one of the people that influenced their life and career. Viktor Frankl is a big influence on many people around being able to choose meaning. And there's a good few others who have taken these ideas and brought them into the way that they have conversations with people as they help them to come to terms with their human condition, to help them solve problems or move forward, or just, sit with the pain and suffering and despair that life so often brings out in us, just as a result of being alive. Everybody could go seek those kind of conversations if they're present with what's going on for them. If we allow ourselves to face some of these existential givens and we want to explore them, we can perhaps build more resilience through that. But many people who go to see a therapist, they already feel like they can't cope anymore and they really need some help, even though I would encourage anybody to go on a therapeutic journey just to ask some deep questions. And this is where existentialism found its way into coaching. You see some of the same names. Most existential coaches that are in this field or have pioneered this field come from an existential therapy or counseling background. I think all of them, other than Anne Lagerström on the bottom right there, and myself, have had that training in existential therapy. Jamie Reed, an early trainer of mine, chose not to offer therapy anymore, but bring this existential grounding into his coaching work, particularly in organizations. So just a bit of history on how that came about. So let's put a little bit of a frame around existential coaching. This is from the earliest full book publication by Emmy van Deurzen and Monica Hennaway, who created their first Masters in Existential Coaching in 2012. Their book, Existential Perspectives on Coaching, came out, an edited version in which many coaches who use or are informed by existential coaching, by existentialism, have written how existentialism influences their coaching. They're right in a quite broad framework, which leaves a lot of space to practice in many different ways. They write that existential coaching focuses particularly on existential issues, such as freedom, responsibility, authenticity, meaning, purpose, paradox, and dilemma. It helps a person to get more of a perspective on the way that they live and work, and to ask some new and more profound questions about life. And again, I would add about work as well. Ultimately, it is an approach with an entirely pragmatic objective to help people live their lives with greater deliberation, liberty, understanding, and passion. And I would again argue that it helps people to work with greater deliberation, liberty, understanding, and passion. Work and life are often so intertwined for so many people. It really is so helpful to bring some of these personal concerns and some of these existential concerns into the way that I'm being human at work. So you see, that leaves a lot of things open in terms of how do we actually work with that. So to give you a bit of an insight or open some of the potential doors of how that might look like, there are a few bits I wanted to talk to you about. One is phenomenological inquiry, how we can use that four worlds model that I described to you in coaching practice. There are models around existential coaching and how a process might look like, and this interplay between tuning in and tuning out. So let me tell you a few bits on each. The main method in existential coaching is one of phenomenological inquiry, which means in a foundational level, we're trying to bracket what we know. We're trying to put everything that I think I know, all of my assumptions, put them in the box, put the lid on, and really tune in with this client, what's going on for them. There's a long tradition of phenomenology. After so many years, it's still a tongue twister. I dare you to try. Husserl wrote many volumes around why it is important to look into what a phenomenon is. And it allows us coaches and our clients to move away from this kind of distractions and assumptions and preconceptions about what we think we know about this. And it allows us to get closer to what the essence is of an experience. And a phenomenon could be anything. It could be an experience at work. It could be an experience in a relationship. It could be looking at a piece of art. So we can try to bracket what we know and really tune in, invite our client to describe their experience, and to, through that process, often new meanings emerge. So anything that a client brings, we can meet them through that kind of phenomenological lens and help them to explore things in that way rather than jumping in. We are jumping in, but we're jumping in to be almost in our client's shoes and in our client's experience, even though that's a futile task, but we can help our client to be more clear about their experience. And we ask better questions when we come from a position of not knowing. Sometimes some questions are better when we do know, but that's depending on your coaching style. So existential coaches come from that position of not knowing and helping our clients to find their own answers. And the phenomenological method is an excellent way to go deeper and help a client do that. So here again is the four worlds model, and there are many ways in which we can use that. I use it, first of all, to meet a client of mine holistically. I want to get a sense for that person in front of me across their human experience. I want to be curious about how they experience themselves in their body, so in their physical environments. I want to get a bit of a sense for how they relate to other people, how they experience themselves with others and compared to others, perhaps. I want to have an ear out for that. I want to figure out who is that client? What is their concept of self? What are the kind of thoughts that are floating around? What are they feeling? How do they make choices? What are their values and their values? And moving into values and beliefs, we're moving into the spiritual world, the Umwelt. And I'm curious about what drives my clients, what sits at the core of them. Do they believe? Is there religion that they follow? Or what is their belief system around how the world works and themselves in it? And then within those dimensions, I'm curious, and I'm very particularly listening to what's their relationship with endings and with paradox, with dilemma. What's their relationship with their sense of existential isolation? What's their relationship with meaning making and not knowing? So what I often do in trainings, for example, is work with these kind of four categories and invite observers to coaching sessions to make just a 4x4 matrix and start noticing elements and aspects that the client talks about. And there are a bunch of questions that you could ask. I have written a lot of them down for you, and I put them in these slides. I didn't intend to show them all. I think these slides will be made available for those to sign up on the summit, but that's some question we can ask. So there's questions you can ask around the physical world, the relationship with our body, with a workplace. Tell me about your home. There's questions around maybe how do you behave at a party? What's your relationship with your family? There's a lot of questions we can ask around the personal world in terms of who are you? Does somebody have a meditation practice? What is it? How do they relate to their thoughts and the way that their mind works? And there's a ton of questions you can ask to explore somebody's spiritual world. So I don't want to spend some more time with that. There are two models, and I will go into more depth on that when we meet in the full summit and we have a coaching demo, hopefully see some of that in practice. But existential coaches often start from a position of meaning. What does that mean to you, whatever that coaching goal is that you're bringing in? What are some opportunities here, and what are your values and beliefs? Because that's always involved in making those kind of decisions. Then you evaluate choices and you talk about responsibility. What are you going to do moving forward? What can you take responsibility for? And then a new cycle might begin. The contact often happens before a client comes in. There's an awareness of if a client comes to choose me as a coach and I haven't met them yet, they will probably have some sense for who I am through a recommendation or a website or whatever that is. That existential contact is quite important. We contract in the beginning. We talk about what are you responsible for? What am I responsible for in this relationship? And we help them explore to create more awareness. And at that point, as coaches, we can tune out and see if there's anything in that box that might be really helpful to this client. And there's a particular awareness towards endings. Sometimes I say, well, this is the second to last session, or we have 20 minutes left today. And that awareness of endings and bringing that out often accelerates the session or brings a special quality to it. Really, it is this interplay between tuning out, being with our clients, and then the coaching part, that doing with, creating actions, helping somebody to move forward, encouraging them to make choices. And depending on how you practice, it might look more like this, that we tune in perhaps most of the time and then tune in at certain stages of it, that it's mostly a being with as our client finds their answers, with an element of helping them to do things. Again, I want to just briefly, this is from Bruce Peltier's early chapter on existential coaching. In existential coaching practice, we want to honor our clients' individuality. We encourage them to be themselves, make their own choices. We encourage that making choices, because there is no not making choices, even if the client tells themselves that they're not making a choice. They're making a choice by not making it. We encourage our clients to get going. We anticipate that a client will get anxious and defensive when there's change coming up and uncertainty ahead. We encourage them to commit to something. Whatever it is, if you find something that we can commit to, we tend to live better or richer. We value responsibility taking, so we encourage our clients to take responsibility rather than avoid responsibility, and to be in tune with that part of the human condition. Conflict and confrontation is to be expected, and particularly in the coaching room as well. I am in conflict with my client existentially because we're different and we have different ideas and opinions. And it's useful to use that what's here and now within our relationship and see how that translates to the outside. And we welcome the absurd. We appreciate it. Rather than trying to avoid it and make it go away by finding an explanation that may be as absurd as the absurdity we're trying to explain away. And really, there is a commitment that clients must figure things out on their own. And given that we live in quite existential times, not only because of the existential threats that we're facing through a global pandemic or through a nauseating speed of development, we live in times where we come face to face with our human condition very often and very readily, and we have access to so many information, and life moves at a speed that just reminds us of all of these existential givens that I described to you. So in leadership, particularly, being the head of a company or an organization or a country, or being the head of your own body, existentially, there isn't a difference because the same challenges we're being faced with. So there's challenges in leadership that often we are not talking about so much, around having to make impossible decisions, around being an authentic leader when perhaps we're representing a company where we don't share 100% our personal values. We don't often talk about anxiety. We don't often talk about endings, that awareness that, you know, the startup could fail any week now, or even a large company that has been established for decades might not make it through a couple of months of not earning through, for example, this pandemic. So I won't get into this more now, but I do want to point that out, that this is very much alive. So just to take home for you, the only way to escape anxiety and dilemma is really to either not exist or to constantly distract ourselves, which often translates to just not live, not really live. We can learn to embrace our human condition. We can foster something I call existential resilience by coming to terms with some of these givens before they hit us in the face or pull the rug underneath our belief system. An existentially informed coach, an existentially aware coach understands the human condition in this way, and that it's inevitable to be faced with these existential givens sooner or later. So we can meet our clients from that perspective and perhaps offer them that perspective. If they continuously fighting the inevitable, we can question that from this viewpoint. And existentialism really provides fertile ground for integrating lots of different tools, techniques, interventions. For me, that was positive psychology mainly, but Gestalt, psychodynamics, solutions focused, whatever is your cup of tea, even NLP, you can implement a lot of these techniques into this foundational framework for making sense of the human experience and my place in it. And we do need more existentially informed and aware leaders in this VUCA world, because otherwise the planet is in great danger, and we cannot afford to distract ourselves from some of these human challenges. So I would welcome anybody who offers leadership coaching to inform themselves. It's great value. And with that, I say thank you.
Thank you, Yannick. Honestly, I feel so sorry that there isn't an option of standing ovation after certain sessions, because I believe yours would definitely get one. So much appreciation coming through the Q&A box. A lot of comments saying the same thing. Excellent presentation. Fabulous information. A new and exciting perspective. So thank you so much, Yannick. We received some great questions, and I know we're almost at the end of our time here, so we will take just a few of them in a moment. And while we head into the Q&A for this session, we'd love to hear your feedback. So please take a few moments to share your input via the poll that you should be seeing on your screen right now. So we have first question is, which of the following topics would you like to explore in future WBECS events? This is a multiple choice question. Once you have answered that one, please scroll down. You will see a second question. Your primary reason for selecting this session is, and after you have answered that one, there's a third one at the very bottom. So scroll down. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how would you rate today's session? Now, let's take a few questions. There were a few questions that came in through the community on your thread. So I'd like to maybe look at those. And just for everyone to know, you are free to join the online community. It's buzzing all the time for the last few days. Yannick will be joining in there to address any questions you might have following today's session. So please make sure you jump in there, and Cecil will put that link for you into the chat box right now. There you go. Thank you, Cecil. There was a question from Dr. Ray Charles. Is existential coaching synonymous to spiritual coaching?
Right. So good question. Thank you for the question. Also, I have a lot of music in my head right now, just hearing your name. So I appreciate that. Spirituality or spiritual concerns are part of the existential coaching landscape. So while a client seeking existential coaching might come in with questions around spirituality and around what is my belief system or how can I make sense of spiritual questions, it's not necessary that an existential coach will necessarily make that part of the coaching inquiry. Many of these existential concerns, they operate in the background, and the coach doesn't necessarily have a big conversations about the big questions. An existential coach would have an awareness of the client's spiritual dimension, but that may or may not be part of the coaching agreement. So really, the existential coach, just as any coach, is guided by the contract that we're making, the agreements that we're making with our clients. So if the client comes for coaching with spiritual questions, then I guess an existential coach would probably be a great coach for them. But they have an overlap, but they're not the same.
Thank you. One more question. This one came from Suze. How do you balance with keeping the aperture open and deep? So existential questioning our existence and deeper questions for life, with concrete action and movement forward versus it just being philosophizing?
Right, that's a really great question. And I think that sets existential conversations apart from existential coaching, because within a coaching framework, we do try to be clear on what it is that we're working on here. And this can be quite a hard contract and a clear vision or a smart goal. You know, it can be quite a tangible outcome that we're trying to achieve, and existential matters become relevant on the way there. But it can also be a soft contract in terms of I'm having this experience and I want to have a richer experience, for example, or I'm feeling a bit empty, or I'm struggling with questions around meaning. And then you might have a large conversation. You might have an open exploratory conversation, but the coach would invite an agreement on what this is. And if a client comes to me and says, basically, I just want to be philosophizing and I want to have some interesting philosophical conversations, I might contract for existential dialogue rather than existential coaching. But this is where the huge umbrella term that coaching can be, and the lack of very clear guidelines of what makes coaching, that comes into our favor. And it is important and crucial in that way that whoever works as a coach, and particularly as an existential coach, has that conversation in the beginning in terms of what do you want, what is this, how do we work together, what I can offer, and where are some of the boundaries of my practice. I love having philosophical discussions, but I would, given that I have the coaching element in that, I would want to know, okay, so given all of this philosophizing that might have happened in the last half hour, 2 hours, what are you going to do differently now? You know, what choices are you going to make going forward?
Wonderful. Thank you, Yannick, for an amazing and insightful presentation. We are excited to have you back in the full summit. And from what I understand, you will showcase what was covered today through a coaching demo. Can you tell us a little bit about what you will be covering?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go into a little bit more depth on the kind of existential models, and then, well, we'll see what happens, right? Because how can you possibly know what happens before a client sets foot in the room and we start having our conversation? We haven't chosen the client yet. It's a good couple of months off, but it probably attracts somebody who may have some bigger questions, but maybe not. Maybe it's a very concrete questions, and we'll have a coaching session where some of those underlying questions that are bigger, they're probably relevant. And if they are relevant enough, they might become part of our conversation, or they might continue to operate in the background. But what we will do is, after this session, we'll look at what happened through an existential coaching lens and show how the philosophy mattered, how it came in here, and how it helped me make decisions on what to ask about or how to hold that space for this client.
That really sounds amazing. Thank you. You can read the details about Yannick's full summit coaching demo and all our presenters for the full summit at wbecs.com/summit. And we'll put this into the chat box for you now. We are currently offering our super early pricing, which saves you up to 50% on all passes and up to $850 off the Pro Coach membership. Last, but certainly not least, if you're interested in sharing this event with your friends, we would really appreciate it. You and your friends will get some amazing gifts if they decide to join the pre-summit with you. Simply register at the link wbecs.com/invite, and you'll get a link and a pre-written invitation to pass along to your friends. And Cecil has just put that link for you inside the chat box. Thank you for joining us today. We know you have many demands on your time, and we truly appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us today. Up next at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we have Molly Chang with a topic of sending powerful messages, how you communicate matters. So for those of you who have to go, you can hop off now. Have an amazing rest of your day. Yannick, thank you one more time. Feel free to jump off. It was really great having you, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in the full summit.
Thank you so much, Dino, for an amazing hosting. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And I hope you found something that you can integrate into your practice. And thank you very much. I'll jump over to the community page now and see if we can get some more conversations going.
Thank you. Okay, for anyone who wants to stay on for an extra few minutes, I would love to answer any questions you have about the pre or the full summit. But before we do that, let me just quickly show you how this page looks like, the one that I just referred to. I'm going to take over the screen from Yannick. So using the invite, so wbecs.com/invite link will get you to this page. This is a page where you can put in your email address, your name, your surname, and after you hit join, you will get an email with an already pre-written copy that you can share with your friends, inviting them to join the pre-summit. In return, introducing 3 or more friends to attend the WBECS pre-summit will also get you all a free ticket to a private session with the organizational psychologist and best-selling author Adam Grant, and much more. So there are a few more goodies coming in should you invite your friends to join. Now let's see what else we have here in the Q&A box, what people are inquiring about. I saw there was a lot of questions about the slides and about the recording. So I'm going to head over to the actual pre-summit membership area. So here, when you join the wbecs.com/WBECS2021 registration PS, this is a place where you, as you probably know, you register for all of your sessions. It is also a place where you can add them to your calendar or attend them live. Every Friday, we will be releasing the recordings of all the sessions that will be up and live for 72 hours. So you will have from Friday till Monday to rewatch anything you might have missed, or simply if you want to rewatch today's session, you can do so here. When it comes to the actual slides, transcript for today's session, this is something that is available to you with the enhanced or the Pro Coach Pass for the full summit. So you will get everything from the pre-summit, including all the sessions that are scheduled for the full summit as well. And you can see which those are if you visit this page over here. Now, when it comes to actual community and continuing the conversation beyond today's session with Yannick, as Yannick said, he will be joining in the community to address any questions, to engage in any sort of discussion and conversation. You can find Yannick's session if you log into the community using the link, one of the links that we shared in the chat box, and simply going to his session over here. As you can see, there's lots of comments already in there. Yannick has already started replying to some of them. So please feel free to jump in there, leave a comment, leave your question, and I'm sure Yannick will get back to you. Let's see what else we have. Deepa, where can we find the week 2 recordings? So as I mentioned, they will be released on Friday. We will be releasing the recordings for this week specifically, this upcoming Friday, and they will be up for 72 hours. Barbara, your question about the IM sessions. So the IM sessions can be accessed from the membership area. So this is the place where you usually register for your sessions. And there's another tab over here called Implementation Mastery Sessions, or an acronym IM sessions, how we like to call them. If you click that, you will get to this page that looks like this, and you simply need to hit register for IM sessions. This will open up a page with a whole list of IM sessions for different keynote sessions that we had throughout this week. Okay, let's see what else we have. Marenza, would you please include once again the link to hear or watch the recordings for this week? So the recordings for this week will be released on Friday. So after all the session took place. So we will be uploading those on Friday. We'll send you an email about those when they're up, and you will have 72 hours, so from Friday till Monday, to rewatch them at your pace, pretty much. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, I don't see anything else coming up. I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed today's session, at least from what I've seen you did. If there's anything we can help you with, please know we're just an email away at support@wbecs.com. Our team is available nonstop. We're very willing to help, ready to help whenever. So feel free to ping them, and they will be able to help with any questions you might have. Thank you so much. Have a nice rest of your day, nice rest of your evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And I hope I will see you again in the full summit. Cheers. Bye-bye.